Hi, namaste. Thank you, Satya, for this opportunity that I could come over here and share my bit of experiences with regards to not only about what I did in my corporate life, about the stories that I'm creating or being part of the stories that's happening currently. To give a brief, I worked with the corporates for close to a little more than 15 years. Was in the HR recruitment or employee engagement, these functions and training. Loads of things, loads of opportunities in terms of learning or implementing those learnings also. So whenever I was just sitting and collating or just putting down what I learned in those 15 years or what I could have done to feel more good about it. I think as a normal human tendency, we all think on those lines. I was just jotting it down. Yes, it was bulleted points. But when I started connecting those bulleted points, like connecting the dots as we call as, I realized that there was a story that was there. Some stories had one kind of a pattern. I would say each of us have one kind of a pattern that consciously or unconsciously gets observed or keeps coming in whatever task that we do. It could be any kind of a pattern. So as I'm sharing this, I'm sure you're traveling with me and you would be wondering, okay, she's got some story to share. She's got some experiences to share. Exactly. Each of us, for that matter, we are born storytellers and we vary or we are special, unique, and we have our own excellences when it comes about sharing the story that we have. Some stories we would love to share, and some stories we would keep it within us. So, I would want to share about the story that I want to share. Exactly. Uh, been working after my corporate as a writer or as a blogger or as a storyteller or as a mentor or a coach for teachers, children, parents, I mean, across. The experience or the kind of an experience that I've got, there are lots of stories that I could actually collate and would love to create that as a bundle in terms of a book. That's when I realized there is a power when we talk about story. Story, it is just not about, you sit in a classroom or when you listen to somebody say, once upon a time there was a lion, once upon a time there was a king, and then what happens after that? We all look for the moral for that matter. Ideally, what's happening is that when we are sharing a story, we are so particular about what happens in the end. So that's the first thing. Don't share the end in the beginning itself. So that's the reason we call it as moral of the story. Or we would say something that some sort of suspense element would open, in the end. And we all are just waiting for that to unfold. But we really miss on the journey part. A story is just not about the moral. A story is just not about the end point. A story is all about the experiences and the journey that we actually travel. It could be any kind of an experience. Let me share one particular story or about this person. So many people I admire, for that matter, about the way they work. It could be a founder, it could be an entrepreneur, it could be anyone for that matter whom I've come across in my life. Because I look at it this way that each of them or each of us have one kind of an excellences, which is a story in itself. I've been working recently on one particular for the corporate storytelling project, a workshop that I'm conducting, which is on getting incorporated with Mahabharata or getting incorporated through Mahabharata stories. When we talk about Mahabharata, there are so many characters, and when we talk about Mahabharata, we always remember about what happened to Bhishmacharya in the end, what happened to Arjuna, what happened to Karna, and many of. I mean, I'm sure as you're listening, even I'm sure that you also Karna as a character really like. What made you like that character? It's the story that he traveled, right? Whether you saw it in the television or when you saw it in the in or you read it for that matter. It is just not that Karna fought the battle, at last he died. That's not the way it unfolds. We know what happened to Karna. Karna was born. He traveled, as a child, these were the things which he faced. And in the adulthood, this is what he faced from his guru. And when he wanted to, prove himself as one of those Kshatriyas or someone who belongs to kings, that kind of a lineage, even there he had kind of a hurdles. But what really made us to stick to this particular character, Karna, is that though we all know Pandavas were for good, they also used unfair means once Abhimanyu was attacked. But Karna, we know that he was in the Kauravas side. Kauravas side, Duryodhana, Suyodhana, Shakuni, Dushasana, and all of them. We would be wondering, Karna shouldn't have been in Kaurava's side. So when there is a pause, when we say that, there is an emotion, and this emotion is what this is the element for a story to run from the beginning till end and to keep the audience hooked to them. And that's exactly the story that happens even in the media houses or in the news channels or any element, whether it's a drama or a movie or a song, a poem, a poem, or even if you call it as. Everything has an element, an emotion flows through a series of steps, and that's how the story kind of unfolds. As I'm going to be sharing about my favorite character from Mahabharata, it is Shakuni. People will be wondering, why Shakuni? As a child, whether it's you or me, we would have heard about stories where, oh, Shakuni was the reason for Mahabharata to happen. Okay, Shakuni, if Shakuni was the reason, what about the other people? Why couldn't they think about the outcome as a larger picture than just dealing with the transactions alone? Yeah, we can definitely ask those questions, which is again a story in place. Let me talk about Shakuni. And of course, I'm going to be connecting that with the present scenario with so many things that's happening around us. Shakuni, yes, someone from Gandhara Desha. I mean, we don't have a lot of research material that could talk about the good deeds what Shakuni had done. But there is a fact that he has been a great person for his people in Gandhara Pradesh or Gandhar Desh. But there was one thing that he had in his mind after getting his sister Gandhari married to Dhritarashtra, that he wanted to take that revenge on Bhishmacharya. Revenge, 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 revenge. Revenge was the outcome that Shakuni was working. So to him, the entire picture, if you talk about outcome or a goal, it is revenge. To kill Bhishmacharya, to get him down flat, like to make him feel miserable, to corner him, to make him feel bad about him, to make him feel vulnerable. Only these were the thoughts Shakuni had. Let's connect that to our goals or outcome. Maybe you are an entrepreneur, or maybe you are someone who want to set things on your own for yourself. So here it is. For Shakuni, it was a revenge. That was his niche, right? And whatever he did, the thoughts, the decisions were the micro niche. Shakuni always visualized. I mean, when we think about something, we create a story within our mind, we dwell in that, we just soak ourselves into that story that sometimes we wonder, I'm not able to come out of the story. When we are into the story, we become a character, we feel the emotion, we feel the pain, we feel the joy, we feel the happiness, we feel all the emotions or whatever the character is going through. But for us to know what, if that character or if that situation was fine or not, we need to step out of that zone. It's called a second positioning. In a story, for us to understand the other person's perspective, we need to step into their shoe, come outside. After once you're in that person's shoe, you definitely need to come outside and be in your shoes. And that's when you do the second positioning element of understanding why the person behaved that way. This can be used for the competitive analysis or just to understand, might be there is something that you're working on and you have a competitor in the market. It could be within your team or in the other organization. You're pitching for the same deal. You both are pitching for the same deal. You go about bidding about it. You do so many things. You do the analysis, pre-sales, and so many things you start preparing. Let's think about Shakuni. For Shakuni, it was always thinking about what Krishna was thinking. Don't you think this is an interesting story to connect with our current corporate life? Shakuni always thought about Krishna and Krishna always thought about Shakuni. Shakuni, why did he think about Krishna? Because he knew that Krishna was the person who was helping Pandavas. And whatever plot Shakuni was creating, Krishna was creating yet another plot to get that plot nullified. So Shakuni was like, okay, if this doesn't work, I need to understand or I need to think what Krishna would be thinking. What will he do? If I create this plot, what will he do? So there was always this visualization in Shakuni's mind about what to do next. All the visualization, he was just not just feeling the revenge. He kept the revenge element outside his mind and body so that he can always look at it from, from the outer, from outside and start working all the elements towards that. So it was always it's so this is all this is the way we also work, right? When we are working on a project, if it's a competitive world. Yes, we talk about the red ocean and the blue ocean concept, and there is so much of blue ocean theories or blue ocean concepts happening in today. Looks like even there also there's a red ocean building up. We could definitely talk about that. So to create a niche, to create something which is an alternate path, we need to know what the other person is thinking. When we know what the other person is thinking, we will strike off so many things from our list that's not going to help in any way. So it's revisiting our storyline or the timeline to check if this story would work or that story would work. If not, this data needs to be processed in this way for me to get that bidding done, for me to get that project, or for me to win the element. That is power of visualization. Let's talk about communication. Shakuni spoke without those words, without speaking, fight without fighting. All these elements we can definitely come across in Shakuni. Shakuni had a way of getting his work done, be it for Suyodhana or Duryodhana as a child, or when he grew up as an adult, until his last breath, Duryodhana listened to Shakuni. It was just not Duryodhana for that matter, be it Gandhari, his beloved sister, or Dhritarashtra, the king of Hastinapura. I mean, it is, if you have to get your work done, it's all about being simple and straightforward about your communication. Sometimes it might be you should not be involved in that particular communication. If that is the case, the transaction will not be done if you don't share the communication or if you don't share your thought itself. So we need to figure out a way how to route or how to reroute the communication channel. It could be through a manager or a skip level manager or through a team member. End of the day, it is just not about only you going and talking everything about what you do. You will have to work a strategy that if this bidding has to happen, might be there is someone in the team. If he can put it across or if she can put it across, there is a way that this project will be materialized in our favor. So it's about the art of communication, how you put it across in a simple way. Shakuni is definitely talking about decision making skills. I know as a fresher when you join or at any level for that matter, there's something which we are always pulled for. Might be this decision of yours didn't work. That's the reason we lost the project. That's the reason we have to pay so much. That's the reason there is a dip in our share value. All these things are possible, right? And for the investor to take a call offers for the to get that funding for your startup, it's about the decisions that you make. Shakuni definitely he had this art of selling his ideas, the way of communicating his ideas, and those thoughts or words they always got transformed most of the time of course into a decision. And that decision moved to the next level of towards the outcome. He didn't look into transactional. He was not. He was task oriented. When I say task oriented, his task was the larger picture, the goal, the revenge, the outcome. So how can we connect that? If we want funding for the business that we are doing, we need to have the facts and the figures in place. We need to have that story that our investor is ready to buy. So for that to happen, you have to gamify or storyfy your thoughts into decisions, your decisions into outcome. And when the investor is going to be listening to your pitching, he wouldn't wait for the moral of the story. He wouldn't wait till the end. The deal is done and you get your investment that you're looking for. Yeah. And then over time, yes, He didn't waste even a single second. Okay, let's talk about he didn't waste years, he didn't waste months, he didn't waste days, weeks, hours, minutes, second, or even for that matter, even a fraction of a second, he didn't waste. Always he thought about the outcome. I mean, you might ask me, Mira, I know the story is quite interesting to think about the outcome, but sometimes it gets exhausted, right? When we've been just thinking about only the end game. Definitely. It's a normal human tendency to think that. But what I perceive for that matter about Shakuni is that even when he was not thinking about the outcome, but there was something that he invested those time to create a plot. So we'll have to divide our day in such a way that if we have to create a story that could help us in getting that investment, a story that could help us in getting that sales lead, or it could be about pitching the deal or getting that lead, that which you have been actually looking for so many months and weeks and years for that matter. It's about splitting our day. For example, for me, how I connect the story with that of my work or my transactions to be done for that matter is that, so I definitely have an outcome in place that this is something that I want to do. You can follow a four quadrant methodology. You have to create four different kinds of stories. How important is it, really important? How much time is required? And what is the return on investment for the kind of the work that you're doing? Most of the time, what happens is we work on one particular quadrant where it is not urgent, it's important, but we just spend most of our time over there by being transactional. But ideally, what Shakuni did was, even though during those unfruitful days or weeks or months or moments, he was plotting an idea. He was working on the strategies. It's again, you can follow the Pomodoro technique or you can work on 80-20 techniques. You know, transactions is something that would take most of our time. Transactions are nothing but those stories which you can eliminate at that particular time. Because when you're going to pitch a deal or when you're going to get something done for yourself, people would want to hear the outcome, people would like to know a brief about the journey, and people would like to know the time and the return on investment for that. But if we just go more about the transactional stories, like this is the way you're going to do, this is what you're going to do, the story gets paused over there. So it's very important what kind of a story that we are creating. And Shakuni never wasted his time. Whenever it was about sharing his ideas, he ensured that the stories are built in such a way that it has the end element, a brief about the journey, and then about how do we go about that. So story is just not about once upon a time, what happened, what is the moral. A story is about how you show the outcome without sharing the end in the beginning. What kind of a journey or the path that you would travel, and what is the return on investment? Because we all of us invest our time, and time is nothing but, of course, the energy and the money. How you want to allocate this energy and money is something that we'll have to work it out. That is where story definitely plays an important role. And the story that I have shared with you is my perspective and my learning about Shakuni. Because when we work on some task, we just take a spreadsheet for that matter. In the spreadsheet, there are so many datas in place. But if we have to talk about how did this happen, why did this happen, where and all can we, allocate this particular fund, how much can we create, in terms of a wealth, how much do we need to invest, how much is the expenditure, what could be the return on investment, what could be the profit and loss, what is going to be the balance sheet. Definitely you go about gamifying or storyfying those thoughts into a bulleted point, those bulleted points which will give them the end picture. So, storyfying is, it's just not an art, it's a science, and we all have been creating stories in our own way. It could be, let us come to the day to day function. Yes, we spoke about what happens in the corporate. Just to summarize, Shakuni and the corporate storytelling for that matter: power of visualization, outcome oriented, task task which is always connected to the outcome or the end picture, and then the decision management or decision making ability, time management. It's an important thing, right? And about achieving that we have committed for ourselves. Stories definitely help us in understanding what our niche and what our micro niche is, and how what kind of a strategy that can help us in building the stories that we have been looking for. The stories are just not about the beginning and the end and the moral. Stories are about investment, wealth creation, financial management, time management, and return on investment for whatever story that you are investing in your life, in your mind for that matter. A story could be between a child and a mother. You show them pizza and you give them a delicious food which is colorful with lots of fruits and vegetables and everything. But child, most of the time the child would look for pizza. That's because visually they are eating that story. Even if you give them the healthy food which is nutritious and it looks colorful, more colorful than a pizza, they might most of the time go for a pizza. Even when you go for a supermarket for that matter, might be you want to buy something from the grocery list. You have something like you want to buy a rice or peanuts or something like that. But as soon as you enter the supermarket, the story in front of your eyes, it's catching our attention visually, that you may want to buy the chocolates, you may want to buy the chocolate syrups, or you may want to buy the chips, or something that you never thought is required in your list at the moment. How we sell the story. For a mother, if she has to make the child eat the nutritious and the delicious food, it's not always about the lion king, or the lion king, or how king became a lion, or it is just not it's about how you pin the stories at that particular moment, that it sells. So as a mother, we sell our first story to our child. The story, people perceive it or eat it visually. A story is felt. A story sometimes heard. So many people, when they're working, they hear a lot of these podcast, which is an auditory one. They hear it, but they build the visual story in their eyes or in their mind. Visuals, when you see something visual, it's just like, for example, a child, when he or she looks at the pizza, it is like almost like a salivating. It's like they start feeling, though it is just visual element in front of your eyes, but the entire system starts working towards it. It's almost like you've tasted one bite of pizza. So, how do you showcase your story? Because it involves all the elements. Sometimes only few elements are required. So, it's for us to plus and minus or multiply or divide, whichever, which story where you sell. And it is not like it needs to be audience specific. And if you're selling a story, something that doesn't match with the audience, then the story will not sell. That's the time they will say, what's the point in listening to your story? So what story you share, it's very important, just not about, about how you make a person feel end of the day. It is about how much of time is invested when they listen to your story. What could be the investment? What could be the return on investment? What's the kind of a decision making ability that story is helping you to think? So every story that you share should have kind of a dot 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 element, as in making a person to think, making a person to think not just about why did this happen, making a person to think about how did this story happen, how the story can be implemented in our day-to-day life, and how can we reap the benefits out of it. So storytelling is just not about moral of the story. Again, reiterating on that. Storytelling is about creating that time for yourself, and how that time can turn into a return on investment for you. Thank you. Namaste.